my mind.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my ASMR YouTube channel. Today, we are doing another true crime video. And today's case is on the college killer. And this case is mainly about Katie Sepich and her murderer. So, Katie Sepich was a 22-year-old university student in Las Cruces. One night, she went out alone, and the next morning, two hunters found her body. She had been strangled, raped, and set on fire. The students in the university were told to stay together, never be alone. The killer could honestly be anybody. So her university that she went to, it was very safe. It had a good education. Many people were very proud to be going to this university. Katie Sepich that year would be one of 25,000 students joining the university. Katie was very loving. She had a lot of friends. She loved her professors. She joined a sorority as well. That's where she found most of her friends. Joe Stoltz was one of the friends that she made, and they would grow to become very close, and they began to date. She really did believe that Joe was the one for her. She even told her mom that he was the one. And he bought her a diamond ring that she wore all the time. Like, she refused to take it off, ever. Unfortunately, they both graduated from New Mexico State, and they kind of had to separate. But, you know, they still stayed close after graduating, so, you know. So basically, the two realized that they were getting a little bit, they weren't spending as much time together. So they planned a romantic getaway weekend, kind of. Well, not getaway, but like a romantic weekend. So basically, Joe Stoltz, her boyfriend, came to her new university in Las Cruces, and they wanted to spend some time together. But that evening, there was a party, which both of them would attend. The next day, unfortunately, Katie would go missing. But as you all know, they did find a body the next day. The missing persons case became a homicide case. After they found her body, the autopsy showed that she had been strangled, but it also showed that she had fought for her life all the way to the end. The end. She had burn marks on her body as well. She'd been burned, and her clothes had been removed. So, one of the conclusions was that she had also been raped. Now, let's get into the investigation. So, Katie's boyfriend, Joe Stoltz, said that they were at a party. She had disappeared from the party, and he thought that she must have went home. Evidence suggests that Katie did make it home that night, but somebody had followed her. Her door was locked, but the window screen, like the screen from her window, had been taken out, just laying outside of the house. So The killer could have taken the screen off trying to get in, but here's the thing. It made more sense that Katie must have taken the screen out as she was trying to break into her own home because she had left the party. She had also left her keys and her purse at the party with her boyfriend. The question was this a random attack, or was it someone that she knew? Theory number one, it was her boyfriend, Joe Stoltz. It was her boyfriend, Joe Stoltz. That's the first theory. Detectives interviewed everybody at the party that night, trying to figure out the entire story. What they had learned was that Katie's boyfriend had left out a very important, kind of shady detail. The night of the party, many people had witnessed a fight between Joe Stoltz and Katie Sepich. Apparently, she had found him kissing another girl. They fought, and she got so angry that she left. Now, this wasn't just a normal, quiet little fight. Everybody at the party heard this fight. So, yeah. And he left that detail out, which was very shady. There were records of Joe Stoltz calling Katie's phone at till 7:30. So, the thing is that this was very weird because everybody saw him with Katie's purse and her keys. So he had Katie's phone, but he was still calling it. So it seemed like he was trying to cover up the fact that he had killed her by making it seem like he was a concerned boyfriend who actually did not know where she was, but he had her stuff, so yeah. After a couple of days of examining her body, the detectives had found DNA of the killer on her body. Now, they could easily find the killer with just a little bit of DNA. Obviously, Joe was very suspicious looking, so they wanted his DNA, but Joe had left town already, and he refused to give his DNA sample. This made him look very guilty, so they couldn't get a DNA sample from Joe. So they decided that they would just take a DNA sample from everybody who was at the party that night. Everyone they didn't mind giving them the DNA. It was only Joe that did not want to give them his DNA. So this was the theory. They thought that at the party, Katie finds Joe with another girl. They fight, she leaves, and he follows her and kills her. That's what they thought happened. Since he wasn't giving a DNA, they couldn't, press any charges or anything, or, they couldn't do anything. Days later, Joe finally agreed and gave them a DNA sample, but his DNA was not a match. So now they were thinking this is probably a random attack. If Joe is not the killer, who could it be? This was the biggest, the most suspicious person that they had, and he wasn't a match. So who could the killer be? It could be a random attack. And this left people in the university, students, feeling very unsafe. 1 year has passed after the murder now at this point. someone recognized, like a dairy farmer recognized that one of the men that was in the composite sketch was one of his employees. And then the second man was also discovered. So their names were Juan Nieto and Gregoria Morales. Gregorio Morales. So now they were like, okay, if these two men did the exact same thing to another victim, this is probably the two men that did the exact same thing to Katie. They took the DNA of these two men that had done this horrible thing, and they tested it, and it was not a match. These were not the men that had attacked Katie. These two men were the last good piece of evidence in Katie's case for 2 years. 3.5 years after Katie's murder, they found a potential match for Katie's attacker's DNA. So they found a match. Gabriel Avila was the match. He was the man that had attacked and murdered Katie. So, after Katie's murder, Gabriel Avila, just 3 months after murdering her, he had tried to find a second victim. He broke into the girl's apartment, and he was confronted by 2 people, not just one. He didn't expect her to have a roommate. Gabriel Avila was scared and ran, but the girls quickly called the cops, and the cops had arrested him. He became a convicted felon for aggravated burglary and assault. His DNA was supposed to be entered into the DNA database, but it was not. So, this stalled Katie's case for 3.5 years. They could have had her murder her in 3 months, but it stalled it for 3.5 years because they didn't take his DNA when they arrested him. So, side note, Gabriel Avila's wife had said that she found a diamond ring in the cup holder of his truck. This diamond ring was the exact ring that Joe Stoltz had given to Katie Sepich. Now, what had happened that night? Let's get into it. So, Gabriel Avila said that he was driving around that neighborhood when he saw Katie. He asked if she wanted a ride home. She said no. He followed her home anyways, and he attacked her near her home. He later drove her lifeless body to a landfill, and he tried to burn her, but that didn't work. He thought it would completely cremate her, but it didn't, obviously, because the next morning 2 hunters had found her body. A lot of the detectives, when I was watching the documentary on this, they said something that bothered me so much, that all of this, I just, like, it was the perfect timing for this to happen, because, you know, this was a random murder. Gabriel Avila was just driving around and he saw her and he, you know, attacked her. But had she stayed at the party, had they not had that one fight, had she walked a little slower, had she walked a little faster, Gabriel Avila would not have seen her. It was just, everything just worked out in a way that this had to happen. Just so messed up. Katie fought for her life. She had the skin and blood of her killer under her fingernails. She literally solved her own case because she had fought so hard. case.